an all-encompassing outlook on where we stand today is what's known as the SWOT model. Okay, the SWOT model focuses on the internal and external strengths and the internal and external helpful and harmful forces. So we're going to look at internal strengths. Right, we're going to go back and see, we're going to go back and see the strengths and weaknesses. We're going to take a look at, what strengths, and once we know the macro environment and the industry environment, we're better equipped to get a grip on what strengths and weaknesses we have as it relates to that. So we're going to take a look at the internal strengths and weaknesses. The internal strengths are helpful. The internal weaknesses are harmful. External opportunities, they're helpful. External threats are harmful. This is what's known as the SWOT model: strengths, weaknesses, opportunities, and threats. Because we know the macro environment. We know what's going on around us. We know the industry environment. We know what's going on around in the industry. We know the competitive forces in the industry. We know the suppliers. We know the buyers. We know the entrants, and we know the substitutes. So we can identify what strengths and weaknesses we have, what opportunities and threats are out there. Right? We've looked at our own internal agency strengths and weaknesses. So we'll be able to put this in a solid, clear picture, to have an idea of the helpful and harmful, internal and external forces that are inherent in our agency: the strengths, the weaknesses, the opportunities, and the threats. Once we have this identified, this is where we stand today. Okay? Okay, now let's move on. Let's move on to going about doing it. Strategic positioning. Okay, a game of chess. Okay, we know that the opponent, we know where the opponent's king is. We know that our king needs defense. So we're going to position ourselves for defense and offense at the same time. That's the ultimate strategic planning. So strategic positioning is bridging the gap, right? We know where the king is, and we know our destination is knocking off the opponent's king. We know our position right now, what needs defense, how we can play offense. So we have to go ahead now and start bridging the gap. Okay? So bridging the gap consists of three things. Okay? Number one, setting the goals. Right? Number two, developing action plans. Number three is communicating the tasks. And we're going to look at these three things in a little more detail. So let's take a look at setting the goals. Okay, there are three things we always have to keep in mind when setting the goals. There are two things we always have to keep in mind when setting the goals. Number one is it has to be within the framework of the vision, mission, and values. Okay? Number two is we have to make sure that we take into account the environment that we're currently in. Now, maybe the best way to put this is to give like a little picture. Okay, so let's take a look. We have a vision. Okay, our vision is in the clouds. Our vision is in the clouds of an environment. That's the industry environment. That's the macro environment. That's the micro environment. That's going to take into account the social attitudes. That's going to take into account the political landscape, the economic landscape. Now we have missions, we have a mission, and we have values. This is going to form the side of our ladder. Okay? The goals are going to be within the framework, within the side of that ladder, within the framework of the environment, and all towards getting towards our vision. Okay? Now, another area to keep in mind when setting the goals is remember, keep a visualization of the SWOT analysis in mind. Okay? And the best way to do it is, remember, we'll coin it beer. Okay? What we're going to do is we're going to build on strengths, exploit opportunities, avoid threats, and resolve weaknesses. Okay? So we know the strengths that we have as it relates to, we know our internal and external strengths that we have as it relates to the outset, to the industry, as it relates to the environment, as it relates to the political landscape, as it relates to the economic landscape. We know the opportunities that exist. So we can exploit those opportunities. We can build on our strengths, exploit those opportunities. We know the threats that are out there. We know the competition. We know the substitutes. We know how, the threat of being, if the suppliers have an advantage over us, or if the buyers have an advantage over us, we know those threats. So we can avoid those threats. Instead of trying to take the bull by the horns, we can develop a plan to circumvent that and bypass it. And we need to resolve the weaknesses. Whether it's internal weaknesses, whether it's external weaknesses, whether it's a weakness that presents itself from the outside environment, whatever it is, we need to resolve those weaknesses. That's what the goals should be set out to do. Okay? And finally, one other point when setting the goals is what's known as SMART goals. Okay? SMART goals are as follows: specific, measurable, accountable, realistic, and time-based. If our goals are specific, they're measurable, they're accountable, they're realistic and time-based, we'll be able to take stock of where we're at. We'll be able to measure the progress. We'll be able to hold people accountable towards accomplishing specific tasks and objectives to reach those goals. If they're realistic, we know what we can expect. If they're time-based, we know the schedule. Next, let's take a look at action plans. Okay? I'm going to show a diagram of what a typical action plan would look like. Okay? The first step is, what is our vision, our mission, and our values? Okay, let's say for example our vision is, we have a vision of having a traditional society. Okay? And our values is, let's say we all believe that education is gold. Okay? And our mission is going to be, we want to educate society about traditions. Okay? So we're going to go ahead and develop goals to accomplish, to reach to realize, to see the mission, vision, and values, to see them become a reality. Okay? So let's say goal 1. We're going to say that our goal is to relay all information about tradition to society. Okay? The next thing we're going to do is develop objectives to achieve that goal. Okay? So let's say our objective is to disseminate information about tradition to society via the internet. Okay? That's going to be our first objective. We have to figure out now, what strategies are we going to use to disseminate that information online? Will we use social media? Will we have our own website? Will we display banner ads on other websites? Let's say we decide that the strategy that we're going to use is to develop our own website to disseminate information on it. So what tasks are involved? We need web development, we need web design, web hosting, generating the content to post online, researching the information, etc. These are all the tasks that we're going to need to implement our strategy. And finally, we have timeline. What are the timelines of each specific task that'll help us implement the strategy, that'll accomplish the objective, that'll help us see the goal reached, that'll help us implement the mission, vision, and values. And we're going to do that for the entire, for all the goals, all the objectives, and for every mission, vision, and value, for every time we want to succeed. This is what the action plan is going to look like. We're going to have goals to achieve the mission, vision, and values. Each goal is going to have its own set of objectives, and each objective is going to have specific strategies to reach those objectives. There are going to be tasks to implement the strategies, and each task is going to have a timeline. In addition, we can have a timeline for each objective. We can have a timeline for the goals. We can have that. So this is basically what